Carver Road, and Shoreside Properties last because there's so much interest. We're going to allow everybody else to go home early except for all those people that have interest and the board members, so we'll hang in with you till the end. And we'll start right at 6. For those who haven't been in one of these meetings before, if you have any reason you want to have discussions with your neighbor or somebody else, please go out in the hall and do that, just because we want to hear everything that's being said to us by the parties at the table. You hear on everything tonight, huh?
Welcome back,
Can't
Mr. Chair.
necessarily see, we have a member that's here via Zoom tonight, and he is seating, can be seen here on the screen. So if you see us looking that way, it's because he's appearing via Zoom. All right. Are we now being televised? I guess we're on. Well, this is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Yarmouth Zoning Board of Appeals this November 10. And as I said, we have several matters on our agenda. For those at home, we'll be taking them out of order to a degree. The first is petition 4963. It's a continued hearing concerning the Cape Cod Hospital in Winterberry Solar LLC, which is a component of the National Grid Incorporated. The property location in question is at 40, 30, 34, and 40 Bayview Street, West Yarmouth. For people that are in the know, not in the know necessarily, that's the parking lot area adjacent to Cape Cod Hospital. So that's what we're talking about this evening. That property is in a B1 zoning district, as well part of it in an R25, residential 25, and as well in the Aquifer Protection District. Tonight, our applicant seeks to modify an existing special permit, that of number 4715, pursuant to 102.2 of our zoning bylaws, in order to construct canopy-mounted solar panels over an existing Cape Cod Hospital parking lot, along with 3 ground-mounted equipment pads and utility poles, or, in the alternative, a variance from 102.2 to allow for installation of the solar canopy panels as accessory to the parking lot. Attorney Eliza Cox is presenting on behalf of the petitioner this evening. Good evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, my name is Eliza Cox. I'm an attorney with Nutter, McLennan, and Fish on behalf of the applicants. I think Michael Bachstein from Cape Cod Hospital should be joining via Zoom shortly, and I'm expecting Daniel Serber on behalf of Winterberry Solar to be coming in the door any moment, but I'll go ahead and get started. So as the board will recall, it's been a little while since we were last before you. We were last here on August 25th, and at that time we presented the project, and we also discussed at that time the Supreme Judicial Court decision that had issued in June of this year, the Tracer Lane case, which is the first SJC decision interpreting the provisions in the Dover Amendment relating to solar. That decision, as you'll recall, confirms that large-scale solar installations are a protected land use under the Dover Amendment in Massachusetts, and also that large-scale solar installations do not have to be accessory or incidental to a residential or a commercial use. And the court reminded all of us that they are key to promoting solar within the Commonwealth. Consistent with that Tracer Lane decision, it remains our position that since the town of Yarmouth's zoning bylaw contains no provisions relating to solar energy systems in any of the zoning districts, solar energy systems, which is both the use and the structures, are protected and therefore allowed under the Dover Amendment. As a further reminder as to why we're here tonight, the relief that's being requested this evening is to modify a prior zoning decision that this board granted, it's number 4715, to Cape Cod Hospital, to reflect the updated site plans that are before you with the solar installations. And I note that these plans do not change the underlying parking plan that the board previously approved, the layout of that parking, or the use of that parking. And also to modify condition number 3 of that decision to clarify that no hazardous materials shall be stored within the portion of the property that's within the Aquifer Protection District. Following our meeting with you last August, the board requested that we provide some additional follow-up in 2 areas. They were decommissioning and containment safeguards. We submitted a letter to you dated October 3rd of this year that addresses those 2 areas, and I'll just briefly touch on them. So first, as to the decommissioning, I'm seeing if Mike's on, he's not yet. We included in the letter confirmation that the lease agreement between Cape Cod Hospital as the landowner and Winterberry Solar as the solar developer contains express provisions requiring decommissioning of the canopies. However, notwithstanding that contractual lease agreement, the letter, which could change in the future, as sometimes leases do, the letter also proposes a draft condition for the board's consideration as part of this zoning application that would require removal of the canopies. And that draft condition requiring the decommissioning is noted on page 2, the bottom of page 2 of the letter in italics. Second, with respect to the secondary containment, which was the other issue the board asked for additional information on, the October 3rd letter confirms that the proposed containment measures exceed the 150% secondary containment that's required by the town. This was also confirmed by Mr. Lawson, who's the town's chief hazardous waste inspector, in his correspondence previously submitted. With respect to the 2 hazardous materials, first for the battery electrolyte, the proposed containment measures result in a 350% volume secondary containment, so that's far in excess of the 150% required by the town. And then with respect to the 2 electrical inverters, the proposed measures result in a 289% volume secondary containment, again, substantially in excess of the town's measures. Still, notwithstanding that compliance with the town's regulations and in response to the board comments, after the last hearing, the applicants revised the site plan to allow for additional containment. And I don't think Mr. Yurgashian is here, so I'll do my best to describe it. I have Kieran to my right as well. But the battery, good timing. Brian, do you want to talk about the changes to the site plan? So Brian Yurgashian from BSC Group, right on time.
Sure, sorry we put you in the awkward position.
It's my
You're
fault.
not late. We're early with you.
Okay, well, it looks like 5 minutes to me. At any rate, thank you. For the record, my name is Brian Yurgashian, professional engineer, and I work for BSC Group. Here before you tonight, representing the applicant, and to answer your question, the changes that we've made to the site plan since the battery storage area was relocated out southerly portions of the parcel outside of the APD. We put concrete curbing around 3 sides of each one of those 3 pads, such that it will prevent any flow to the abutters to the west.
Is that shown on some plan?
Yes, it's shown on sheet 2 of 2. And there's if you see where the 3 batteries, or the 3 concrete equipment pads are located, the middle one, if you go up to the north and west of the middle pad, it's very difficult to read, but proposed precast concrete curb on 3 sides of the equipment pads. It is shown with a bold line. It's difficult to see, but the 3 sides are the north, south, and the west side. So in the event that there was any runoff there, it would all be directed in towards the site, away from the APD, away from the abutters, and into the existing stormwater collection system.
Thank you very much.
The other point we wanted to note, and Mr. Serber was going to make this, but I don't think he's arrived yet. As part of this project, Winterberry Solar will be contracting with Clean Harbors to handle any cleanup in the event that there is an incident on the site. If the board is familiar with Clean Harbors, they're a nationally known environmental company that handle hazardous waste management, emergency spill response, cleaning, and maintenance. And so in the very unlikely event of a spill, all materials would be sealed within the battery container, and no one would be permitted to open any portion of that storage facility without the licensed experts at Clean Harbors present. Clean Harbors, Nextgrid has told me that Clean Harbors won't sign a contract for a theoretical project. So if the board were so inclined, we would accept a condition such as, and I'll just read what we had written, prior to the energization of the battery storage facility, the applicant shall furnish the town with proof that they have contracted with Clean Harbors for emergency services and provide the hazardous waste inspector and the fire chief with that emergency response plan. So we would accept that as a condition of the decision. And I
As
guess
one of our conditions, you'd accept that
yes,
condition?
absolutely.
Okay.
Wrapping up, I just wanted to take one moment to quote from the Massachusetts Clean Energy and Climate Plan for 2025 and 2030, which was just issued in the end of June this year by the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs. This plan was required by legislation that Governor Baker signed in 2021, and it sets limits on greenhouse gas emissions, including a comprehensive strategy for reduction of those emissions. And Chapter 6 of the plan, which is entitled Transforming Our Energy Supply, contains a strategy called Supporting Offshore Wind and Solar Industry Development. And I'll just be very brief, there's a couple of sentences I wanted to read. So in that strategy, it says, second, coordinating the Commonwealth's need for additional solar resources with the need to protect valuable natural and working land, DOER, which is the Department of Energy Resources, will work closely with environmental protection agencies and stakeholders to ensure that the incentives provided to solar and solar storage products do not unintentionally harm valuable natural and working lands and forests. In addition, DOER will continue to encourage deploying solar and storage projects on built environments. These built environments include 2 million systems installed on rooftops and lawns, fields, roads, and parking lots, much of which may be suitable for deployment of solar and storage resources. And I would suggest that, simply put, this project is precisely what the Commonwealth is seeking to incentivize and encourage. It's the development of a clean solar energy over existing paved and impervious surfaces. I know Mr. Serber walked in. Daniel, do you want to make the sort of wrap up with the comments that you were going to lead off with regarding this project? And then we're happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Yeah, absolutely. So happy to be back.
Always glad to see you.
Thank you so much. So this was supposed to be an introduction, but it's been quite a long time since our first visit here. The first time we came to visit you was March 21st of this year, so it's been about 7.5 months. It's the longest I've ever spent permitting a project. So I wanted to just take a second and go over some of the points of the project. This is a solar canopy project which will provide clean power built in Yarmouth, generated in Yarmouth, consumed in Yarmouth, and taxed by the town of Yarmouth. In addition to moving the battery storage away from the APD as requested by your board, we've also designed this system with the input of the building inspector as well as the design review committee. We structurally engineered an entirely custom design so that we would not lose a single parking spot, but also we wouldn't lose a single tree in the parking lot. This is dual-use planning at its finest, and it incorporates best planning practices with the development of solar, which Eliza already went over. It's what the state is asking for right now. This project will provide income for the town of Yarmouth. It'll provide income and other ancillary benefits for Cape Cod's largest employer, Cape Cod Healthcare. It will not strain town resources. It will not add to the school, strain on the school district. It's set far back from the street and will have little to no effect on abutters. And after 7 months of hearings, we have not had a single member of the public call, write, or appear here with any concerns. So we believe this project is a win-win-win. And we think it's a positive project. And we hope it can be viewed in a positive light because we believe this is low impact and good for everybody involved.
Thank you very much.
We're done.
Okay. See if the board has any questions and follow up to what we had heard earlier in August and now may have with respect to your responses. John, do you have any questions about the petition?
No, I don't have anything else. Thank you for the,
How about you, Sean?
Yes, please. Thank you.
This may be a quick night.
Relative to these battery storage areas, I'm looking on the plan, and it says Jersey barrier. Is that gray line representing Jersey barriers going all the way around that? I see one Jersey barrier there. I'm not sure how you, if so, it looks like it goes all the way along the back of the parking lot.
There's bollards as well.
So the Jersey barrier is existing, and the bollards are proposed. I don't know if that answers your question.
So this plan I'm looking at, is this conditions on the ground, or is this proposed? Or both?
Sheet 1 is the existing conditions plan. Sheet 2 is the site plan, which is drawn with the existing conditions grade in the background. So
So there's not going to be a Jersey barrier that guards those? The bollards will be guarding them?
that's correct.
And how deep are there footings with the bollards?
Yeah, it's, I don't have the standard detail in front of me, but yes, it's designed for frost protection.
And if a car runs right into them, at what impact will it stop the car? Do you know?
These would be,
At what speed?
concrete filled, they're not the breakaway ones that you see on the medians.
Okay, so if somebody backs into it or something,
It's going to damage the car.
Okay, that's all I meant, yeah. Okay, all right.
I would just add that this was actually something that the fire department, I think there's a letter in your file, specifically requested installation of those bollards.
Okay, I mean, there are different bollards. I leaned on one day and knocked it over. Wasn't yet where you guys are, but, yeah. Relative to the decommissioning, I know it's, how is that guaranteed? And who's paying for the decommissioning? Is there an insurance policy that you guys are going to carry?
Under the lease, is that what you're asking?
Well, I just want to know, because I've read a lot about the windmills up in Falmouth, and it cost millions of dollars to decommission them, and it didn't appear that they had a plan in place to pay for the decommissioning. I want to know if you have a plan in place and you have a source of payment to decommission those.
So, yes, we set aside enough money usually in a interest. Excuse
How
me?
about going back to the podium?
You got it.
You were better over there.
So, yeah, generally, we set aside money to put in an interest-bearing account for the decommissioning of these projects.
And how much money do you have set aside for that?
It's usually on a per-watt basis, so for this project, I believe it's $157,000, doing the quick math in my head.
So you think you can decommission this whole thing for 157 grand?
With recycling and other, that's what our engineers come up with, yeah.
I don't think that's realistic.
Okay.
I don't think I'd be comfortable with anything. I think that needs to be a condition, and I think there needs to be suitable funds set aside for the decommissioning of this. Would you agree to set aside $1.5 million? No?
No, our biggest projects in the state don't come anywhere close to $1.5 million.
Can you give us some type of estimates for the cost of decommission? Do you have other projects that have been decommissioned?
We have no projects that have been decommissioned. There's no solar projects that have been up for 25 years in the state. But we
What happens
provided
if-
decommissioning bonds.
Let me paint a scenario for you.
Yeah.
there's a solar company, is it in Yarmouth? Solar Wolf? They're gonna go bankrupt, right?
Yep.
So, let's suppose your guy goes bankrupt,
Sure.
and those things are not running anymore,
Yep.
and they need to be taken down. Who's gonna pay for that? Will the hospital guarantee the cost of the decommission of those, if necessary, in the decision? Would you accept a condition like that?
I would have to talk to the hospital before I can comment on that.
Okay.
But just so you know, these are state-backed 20-year contracts. If we were to go bankrupt and this was installed, there's no way that this isn't going to be sold as part of any bankruptcy proceeding, and another company is going to get the income that these are guaranteed by the state. This is not going to just die out because we do. This is going to serve the life of,
I'm sure,
yeah.
I'm sure everything you say could be true, but, I mean, I deal in worst-case scenarios. Let's say they're sitting there dormant and they need to be taken down. Who's gonna take them down and who's gonna pay for it? I think we should be entitled to know that.
Well, I've proposed an amount, and you're welcome to peer review that amount with a third-party engineer on how much the decommissioning would cost.
But we're not gonna do that.
Okay.
I would think that that would be something that you would wanna know.
Yeah, we do. We get
Okay,
the
so
decommissioning estimates.
I don't wanna quibble with you, we'll move on. So your position is for $157,000, you can decommission it. That's all I had for that one.
Well, let me follow up with it for a second, okay? And before you move on, Sean, there is a letter that has been presented to us by Attorney Cox, and it puts forth language down at the bottom of page 2 that deals with this abandonment. The problem that I think following up on Mr. Igo's comment, the problem is that it says as follows. For purpose of this, if the solar energy system has reached the end of its useful life or has been abandoned as described herein, the canopy shall be removed within 1 year after the date of discontinued operations. It doesn't tell me who's going to remove it, and it doesn't tell me who's going to pay for its removal. So I think if we just tweak that, and the hospital said, well, if our contractor abandons the process, we're going to be held responsible for it, including its decommissioning, and at our expense. I have every faith in that the hospital has the financial fortitude to do it, and that they'll be here 20 years plus from today. So, I mean, would something like that satisfy you?
If they're willing to accept that condition.
Yeah, I think we could accept that condition.
Well, I mean, it seems like that's why you're
That's the
offering
intent
that.
of this, yeah.
Offering that language, I say we just broaden it a bit and kind of put the onus on the Cape Cod Hospital to assure that their contractor stays on top of their ability to decommission if it needs decommissioning. Is the useful life of this system about 20 years?
Our initial contract with the utility is 20 years, and we anticipate a 5-year add-on on top of that, so 25 years is what we plan for.
Kind of like when I got to replace my roof shingles, huh?
Yeah, something like
Yeah,
that.
well, the guy who wants to take them off my house wants to know how he's going to get paid for them. Same thing here. We want to know how the town's not going to be on the hook for them. We ran into this with the wind mills that were proposed, and no plan whatsoever for the payment other than a broad term of, oh, we will take care of it if we abandon it.
Yeah.
Well, you know, that we didn't find that satisfactory either. Maybe that's why they never got built, but we certainly didn't find that satisfactory. We're not trying to pick on you.
Absolutely. And if you guys want to put a bond condition that'll be approved by your building inspector that'll be collected before the building permit, you know, we can agree to that as well. I'm not going to agree to a blanket amount on the spot here, but
No, of course you're not. But, you know, a bond cost, it's merely an insurance policy.
Sure.
So if you want to insure, if your company wants to insure its ability to take care of this problem, by all means, buy a bonded policy.
Sure.
But we're not interested in telling you how much it takes. We're not on the end of determining that, and our building commissioner is not on the end of estimating that, or even going out in the field and trying to make a determination. We're relying upon the petitioners, i.e. the two of you, I point to the two of you, to bring us the information and to bring us the solutions to the problem. We've identified the problem. If we can add a language like that, I think it would satisfy me. I don't know if it would satisfy Mr. Igo, but
No, that would, as long as the language says that, in the event that it's abandoned and there isn't somebody or a policy or whatever, that the final guarantor of the decommissioning is Cape Cod Hospital, and it's their financial responsibility ultimately. I mean, if you have an insurance policy, if you have a contract, if that happens, that's fine. But if everybody disappears, the hospital is going to be on the hook to remove them.
Yeah, I think that's basically in the lease as well, so, yeah,
Leases get broken.
right. No, I think we can accept that kind of language.
yeah, I mean, I'm not concerned whether the lease gets paid, and the rent gets paid, or the electricity is reimbursed to the Cape Cod Hospital for use. I'm concerned with what happens when the system's no longer viable. And I don't want to see this town be on the hook
Understood.
for the payment of a single dime for the system or its removal. So I think we can
Yep,
agree on
I agree.
language before you leave tonight. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Did you have any
No,
questions?
actually, I'm fine with that. That's all. Thank you.
For my part, and I'm going to kind of break with tradition, and going to Dick first, but for my part, you've answered all my questions satisfactorily. I thank you. I thank you for coming up with the berm system around those batteries. It's certainly needed. Aesthetics don't much matter to me in that location, but the protection of the aquifer sure does, and so that's why it's there. So thank you. Dick, did you have any questions of petitioners?
No, I think I'm good. I have nothing beyond what you gentlemen have brought up, and I'm comfortable that the requests have been accounted for here.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Bockstein is on from Cape Cod Healthcare,
Oh, yes, of course.
so maybe we could let him respond
Jay,
to that
if we
as
could
well.
invite Jay in if he's not already with us. He should
I'm
be. with-
here.
Well, hello, where are you?
I'm on. I can see myself. I don't know if you can see me.
Good
but-
enough, we can see you. Go right ahead and tell us what you, ask any questions you may have, and
Well, first of all, I just want to welcome you back, Mr. Chairman. It's nice to see you. Unfortunately, not in person, but nice to see you.
good to be seen, thank you.
I just wanted to know if there were any other changes other than the letter that you sent and the updates you gave us on decommissioning and others, or is it the same as it's been presented over the last couple meetings?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The only changes to the site plan are the berming containment around the battery pads, as Mr. Yurgasian walked through, and then the supplemental information in the October 3rd letter. No other changes to the plans are proposed.
Okay, then I don't have any other questions. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask Mr. Bockstein to speak for a minute? Would that be okay? He's
Sure,
on
feel
Zoom.
free, sure.
Mike, go ahead I think you had some comments.
Thank you so much. Back to the decommissioning under the lease, and we did work from our legal perspective with Winterberry on this, was that if they do not, for some reason, or their company has changed or something, they do not remove or they fail to remove the solar field at the end of lease term, or if they fail to comply with any of the lease terms, then we will remove the solar field at the Cape Cod Healthcare's expense and then seek legal recourse against Winterberry. At that time, we would return the site to its natural state as it is today.
Thank you. Thank you. I guess that answers that question, huh? So it's nice to hear the hospital's willing to indemnify and hold harmless the contractor. Hopefully the contractor puts away enough money to do it themselves and maybe does a second set of panels at the end. Does anybody in our audience care to speak in favor of this petition? If so, come to our lectern and let us hear what you have to say. Seeing none. Does anybody in our audience care to speak in opposition to this petition? If so, please come to the lectern. Seeing none, we now close it to the town, to the public's input, open it up to board discussion, deliberations. I'd be very happy to try to come to some language that would work with your language at the end of paragraph, page 2, while you have two lawyers on the board willing to criticize each and every word you suggest. Why don't we just put our thoughts to that so we can have you incorporate that into a decision, okay?
Yep.
Draft decision. How do you propose to do it? I mean, I know you don't want to be the first party to pay, but, I mean, the Cape Cod Hospital, I don't mean you particularly, Attorney Cox.
Understood.
How about all expense for the removal of any abandoned property? Shall be the sole responsibility of Cape Cod Healthcare in the event that, and I'm sorry, who's the contract? What's the contractor?
A Winterberry Solar. Yep.
Winterberry Solar LLC?
Yep.
That's who would be paying for the abandonment?
Yes.
All right. In the event that Winterberry Solar LLC fails to pay for such removal.
I think that's fine.
Does that sound reasonable to you?
Yep.
John, that sound reasonable? Dick, does
Yep.
that sound okay?
Yep, good.
For such removal. Attorney Cox, does that sound reasonable to your client? To pay for such removal?
Mike, are you okay with that?
Yes, yep, we're comfortable with that.
By the way, I was recently at your facility, and I want to thank everybody there for the wonderful work they did with me. It was great.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
All right, well, you had very fine doctors and very fine lunches and dinners, too. The menu is fantastic. So, I guess we're looking forward to a decision from you, draft decision. We did have, let's see, that one condition there. Oh, and that there be a contract with Clean Harbor is
Yeah.
the second
I
condition.
can, the language I read, we can include that in the draft decision too.
Okay. I didn't realize just how much I missed these meetings until getting here tonight. All right. Let's go to, say thank you very much. We'll look forward to getting a draft.
Mr. Chairman, we need a motion.
Oh, Jesus, we didn't even move on.
It's his first night.
I'd
We'll bring him up.
I'd be,
Don't worry, by the time he gets to shore side, we'll be all set. He'll be like a Swiss watch.
You know,
I'd be happy to make a motion with the two conditions to approve the petition as presented.
good thing Sean and Jay are on the ball here. Yeah, okay, so there's a motion now made by Mr. Frapery to approve the petition on the conditions we've discussed, Mr. Frapery?
Yes,
All right,
the two conditions are discussed.
okay. The notes on the end of the page 2 and the Clean Harbor contract. And Mr. Martin, is that what you're seconding?
It is.
Does the board care to have any discussion before moving it along to a vote? Hearing none, I'm just going to say that I think it's a wise and sound amendment to the prior decision of this board relating to your parking facility. I think it's a very adequate and wonderful use now, of very positive use of that property for a very good reason, that is solar power generation. So thanks for coming up with it, and all of you considering the expense of it and the implementation of the initial cost of it. Pretty cool. I just hope it doesn't blind me when I drive down that road with the sunlight.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
if I may. As you know, I've been a vocal critic of this, and not because of your efforts or my lack of support for solar energy, but merely because of the structures. I think that they represent a negative visual impact to the neighborhood and the surrounding district. However, where yours are located, they really won't be seen. It's not really that I'm concerned with yours, it's I'm concerned with where else they're going to be placed in town. So I would implore our planning board to take this up and designate certain areas that these shall be built and certain areas that they shall not be built. I do agree with your legal thought, or your legal argument that the Dover Amendment and the SJC decision, they are correct in controlling, and we do not have any places in our bylaw or in the town that we designate these to be built. So you are correct, and so I am in support of this. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So we'll do a voice vote now that we can get away with that.
Yeah.
There's a motion made and been seconded to approve the petition on the two stated conditions. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? It carries unanimously on a 5-0 voice vote to approve the petition. I'll look forward to seeing the draft decision. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there was a variance that we had also submitted as sort of to accompany this
You did it in the alternative?
in the alternative. So I'd like to ask that that be withdrawn without prejudice.
So
No,
moved.
I think we're going to hear Mr. Igo say moved and somebody say second.
Second.
Board doesn't need any discussion on that motion, does it? Hearing none, hearing nobody saying yes. All those in favor of the motion to allow the withdrawal of the variance without prejudice, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, it carries unanimously.
Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. And for letting
Thank
us
you.
go first.
Bye-bye.
Is Attorney Walsh here? Look who's coming up to the table. How are you tonight?
Doing well. How are you?
Good, thank you. So this, for everybody at home that's interested and here in the audience, concerns variance granted previously of 4937 regarding the Tasty Tidbits Realty Trust located at 175 Route 28 in West Yarmouth. That property is located in the B2 zoning district, and tonight the reason for appearance of Attorney Walsh and Mr. Healy. And Mr. Healy, for the review of the conditions set forth in variance number 4937, dated July 18, 2022. Good evening.
Good evening.
Would you let everybody at home know who you are?
Yes. Kristen Walsh of Pizzuti Law, attorney for the petitioners Evangelina Zambellis and Christos Kounatas, trustees of the Tasty Tidbits Realty Trust. We appeared here back in February and April with proposals to mitigate certain nonconformities to the zoning bylaws as to the parking at De Parma. And we sought variance relief to add parking spaces in the buffers, reduce the size of parking spaces, omit certain in-lot trees, and increase the lot coverage. After review of the revised proposal, the board generously approved the various requests with certain conditions. We're obviously here tonight to discuss and review the conditions that were included. They are that we were required to have a painted fire lane as determined by the fire department, obtain a certificate of compliance from conservation, plant 5 trees that were seen on the plan that we had submitted. Also The lot was to contain 66 total spaces, and those spaces were to be at least 9 by 18. We were to remove certain spaces and mark on the pavement that they were no parking areas, and submit a revised site plan.
Thank you very much. And so, tell us what's happened.
So they have been hard at work, and we have on the ground the painted fire lanes. We have the total spaces. We've removed spaces, done the majority of that work. Kieran was able to get the certificate of compliance from conservation. So from where we're standing, they did the best job that they were able to do with these conditions.
So are all 5 conditions complied with in full?
I believe so, yes.
How about the parking spots? I think there was an adjustment, wasn't there, to some of the parking spaces?
There were an adjustment, yes. The primary adjustment was along the front of the building. There were angular parking areas facing diagonally to the road. That was reduced, and a 5-foot strip of pavement was dug up and removed so that the parking spaces now are parallel to the street, and that just allows those parking spaces, the addition of a full traffic lane, fire lane, and also a 5-foot walking strip for pedestrian, just to make the front of the building safer. That was what was submitted to the board, and all those portions of the project have been complete. And as Kristen said, the trees have been planted, the fire lane goes around the building, around the backside. One of the parking was removed adjacent to the westerly side where the handicapped was, and those areas where, you may remember that I went out with the fire department and we actually drove around the building. They were gracious enough to actually take the time, find out where the trouble spots were. We identified those, and with the fire lane that we have, we taken care of those issues.
So I think we had a concern that there was adequate turning radius for the fire apparatus to get around there, and that's,
That was the very reason we did it. Basically put it on the ground and see the issues that they had. We used my truck in parking spaces as we went around to identify those places with the fire department.
okay, all right. Okay, thank you. Sorry to jump in there, Mr. Chairman. Just,
No, please, feel free.
I think they're,
It's always more fun when we have a free-for-all around here.
I think they've complied with everything that we've asked of them.
Yeah, I went by there today too, and everything is there now.
Yeah, I know my biggest concern was the ability for a fire truck to get through that parking lot when there were cars filling every space, and apparently the fire department is satisfied with that from what they indicated, and you've got a recorded certificate of compliance from conservation. That's good to see. And the trees, the tree locations where we wanted some pavement removed, and those are planted now, are they?
Yes.
Correct.
And they healthy? You're watering them and that sort of thing?
I saw them yesterday. They look beautiful.
Well, you know, the problem is that we ask people as part of these approvals sometimes to do plantings, particularly along the 28 streetscape. And they plant, and then they never consider to plant again. Well, plants just don't necessarily take without some help, so kind of sad to see. I won't mention the one I'm thinking of, though, that's near the post office. We'll let that go.
That poor tree.
Huh?
That poor tree.
I watered them once.
That whole strip just bugs me, but that's my own problem. All right,
I did
well,
have Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
I did have a comment, if that's okay, or if you're asking questions.
I'm sorry.
Is that all right?
Make a comment?
Of course.
Okay. I also had an opportunity to drive through and drive around, and I think they did a really nice job on the front as far as the new parking spaces, which are, I'll call them horizontal to the building, and the fire lane and a walk area. So I think it's a much better situation in front. The fire lane goes all the way around. And we had asked about the back parking spaces also, which we felt were very narrow and small. They're wider. The depth it's okay, but it's tight. So I think what we've asked them to do, they have accomplished, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. I think that sometimes when we ask for conditions to be included, they turn out pretty good. And in this case, they did. Petition might not be happy with the loss of some parking spot, but what the heck? We're not trying to make everybody happy in life. All right, so does anybody else have any comments or questions about this on the review? And is that, can we, I guess at this point, we entertain a motion made by somebody on our board to consider that the petitioner has met the conditions that we asked to have reviewed at this time, and therefore we approve them in whole and require no further review.
So moved.
Mr. Igo has moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Martin has seconded. I'm sure you're taking notes because I'm looking forward to your draft decision. All right, does anybody care to have any discussion on that motion made and seconded? Mr. Frapery, any questions or comments?
No questions.
John, how about you?
Nope, none.
Sean, you moved. Mr. Martin, you seconded.
Fine.
All right, since we're not going to have any discussion, let's move it to a vote. All those in favor of the motion made, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those
Aye.
opposed? Those opposed? It carries unanimously. So look forward to getting a draft decision, just acknowledging that the decision itself has already been granted, but to acknowledge that the review has occurred and the board was satisfied with its terms, okay? Thank you very much for coming in this evening. Next petition is
Thank you,
that
Mr.
of...
Chairman. Thank you, members.
Good to see you, Mr. Healy. And you did a fine job of presenting this evening. Did he say anything?
No.
Yeah, he did.
That's the first that's ever happened. All right, the next is 4986, that of Sarah Perkins, concerning property located at 49 Carver Road in West Yarmouth. That property is in a district of R25, residential 25. The applicant seeks a special permit pursuant to 104.3.2 of the Town of Yarmouth bylaws for side setback relief to construct an attached two-car garage with living space on second floor on a pre-existing non-conforming structure. Good evening, and would you identify yourselves first?
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Paul Tardif. I'm an attorney in Yarmouthport. And seated with me is Sarah Perkins, who's the owner of the property at 49 Carver Road.
Well, welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Don't look so nervous. We don't bite anybody. Go right ahead, please.
Well, this property is in the R25 zoning district and is currently improved with a two-story, single-family structure with 3 bedrooms and 2 baths, constructed in approximately 1952 on a lot containing, we'll just say, a foot shy of 8,000 square feet. The existing structure conforms with the current front yard setback and one of the side yard setback, but encroaches 1 foot into the rear, 20-foot setback by 1 foot, and approximately 6 feet into the other side setback. The lot coverage is 15.3%. The proposal is to attach a two-car garage to the westerly side of the property and to construct new living space on the second floor to be attached to the existing living space. The front yard setback will continue to be compliant. The setback on the new addition side of the property will be 9.6 feet, which is slightly better than the other side of the property. And it should be noted that the abutting structure to the east, so where this garage is going, the house that's on that side of the property is located about 110 feet away. It's comprised of about 4 different lots put together, so it's very, very far away and treed. The structure closest to the new addition on that neighbor's property is a two-car garage. So even if they were looking at the building, it's looking at the side of a two-car garage, so very far away from the actual living space in that property. Lot coverage is going to increase to 21.3% from 15.3%, and the height of the addition is not going to be taller than the existing house. The bedroom count will increase to 4 bedrooms, and a new Title V septic system will be designed and installed to accommodate that additional bedroom. Under 104.3.2, this board can issue a special permit if it's determined that this extension is not going to be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing non-conforming structure. The new structure and the design obviously beneficial to the neighborhood, attractive, fitting with the changing neighborhood. The use of the property is not going to change. The neighbor to the east will likely not even be able to see it. The new encroachment will be 3 inches less than the existing encroachment to the east. Although it's an encroachment, it's not, I would say it's not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. And for those reasons, we hope that you can see to issue a special permit to Ms. Perkins tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martin, any questions of our petitioner?
No, I'm comfortable we're maintaining the front setback that's there now. The wood deck is there now too, right? There's no change to that, right?
Wood deck in the back,
Okay.
yep.
So there's a little, that doesn't quite meet the rear setback, but that's existing. When this lot was subdivided and the original house was built, it was a 6-foot sideline setback requirement at the time, and so I always feel a little more lenient toward those, because they could have done that in the beginning and never had an issue. The new setback is a hair more than the existing setback on the other side. Is the abutter that's affected, one you mentioned with the garage on that side, they're comfortable with this? Have they been talked to?
I think he's here.
Okay, all right. I mean, that's I don't really, I mean, it's a pretty big house on a pretty small lot and a fairly big addition, but I think it's in keeping with the neighborhood and a lot of what's there. I think both the house plan and the addition are done in good taste, and based on the factors that I'm mentioning, I think it's a reasonable request for a special permit under the circumstances.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Igo?
Yes. Currently, you have 3 bedrooms in the house?
Yes,
You're adding a master bedroom?
yes.
Now, it's really not our department, but are you going to eliminate a bedroom?
No,
You're going to go with 4 bedrooms?
yes.
Does your septic system carry 4 bedrooms?
No, I need to update the septic system.
You're going to put your septic system in the front yard?
I don't know.
I don't know if you're going to get machinery around the back, but you really should always put, the rule of thumb is you should always put it in the front yard anyway, because you can't add on to the front, you can always add on to the back, so.
I think those rectangles that are shown, that's for the septic, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe you can put an extra field or something in, I don't know, that's the Board of Health. Other than that, I agree with all of what Dick said in his comments. I think it does meet the criteria of the bylaw, so I certainly would be in support of this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. John?
I don't really have anything to add. It's a tight fit, but it is what it is, so I don't have anything else to add.
Thanks.
Jay?
I drove by it. I think it is in keeping with the neighborhood as far as an addition goes. I would be anxious to hear what the neighbor says that's on the eastern side, because this is, as far as I'm concerned, it is an increase in nonconformity because it wasn't a problem on that side before. So I'd be mostly interested in what they have to say. But other than that, I think it's a reasonable request if it's acceptable to the neighbor.
Okay, a
That's
couple
all.
of quick questions if I can. The septic's in the back, isn't it?
Correct.
And so before the proposed addition is constructed, can't the system be, the equipment needed to upgrade the system to a Title V for 4-bedroom?
It could be
Right
there.
in that side?
It could be, yeah.
Put it in first.
Put in first, yeah, that makes sense.
Just wanted to make sure we were on.
Yeah.
I don't know how wide that equipment is, but it's got to be bigger than 10
Crane it
feet.
over the top.
Helicopter, yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's good to see. I echo the comments you've already heard. I think it's a big building for a small lot. The small lot's a reality, and the garage structure that you're proposing, or the proposed addition rather, is not obtrusive or unwarranted for the neighborhood. Fits in there nicely. We've granted side setback back relief much more frequently than we ever consider front setback relief. In fact, I just read a decision authored by my co-chair, and he pointed out that reticence on the part of this board very well, and acknowledged that we seldom do that, but we very often give this side setback relief. So I don't think we're creating any new precedent, Mr. Tarter.
I understand.
I know you enjoy precedent.
I love it. I love it.
So
I remember it all,
I
too.
think this is in keeping with our usual discussion of these problems and issues, and it looks like a very tasteful design and will make much greater utility for this property than it otherwise enjoys now. So I'm certainly in favor of it. Does anybody in our audience care to speak in favor of this petition? If so, please come to the lectern and let us hear what you have to say. And tell us your name and your property location, please.
My name is Richard Kelly, and I'm the abutter on the
Hi,
west
Richard.
side. And I have no objection to this. My family's owned this property since 1933, and we had 5 lots altogether. And I combined the 5 lots because I was paying taxes on each one of them when they changed the zoning. And they notified me and said, if you want to build on it, now's the time to do it. And we had no intention of building on it. So when she wanted to put a garage over there, I thought that was a good idea, and I thought I could give her some of the property at no charge to her if she needed a side setback. But they told me that I shouldn't give any more property because I'd be non-conforming myself. So I decided I wouldn't do that.
You wouldn't want to see that.
But I think adding a garage to this property is going to certainly help the neighborhood. We've only got 2 garages in the whole neighborhood. And we've got a lot of kids that are in the neighborhood, and people come and they park. And kids go behind cars and everything else. And I think if you have a garage, you can put the car in the garage. It's going to be a good safety factor. So I wholeheartedly endorse this, and I thank you for your time.
You know, we learn more about the town of Yarmouth by historians such as yourself coming in and telling us these things. It's just great. You know, I think everybody on this board knows just about every neighborhood, but we don't know every story. So thanks for sharing.
Well, I go back a long way in Yarmouth. I was on the original school committee of DY.
So sorry.
That's when I was 24, and I started learning a little bit after that. And so it's I'm 11th generation Cape Cod, so I'm not a washer shore that's talking to you tonight.
Thanks for all you've done for the town.
Thank you.
Good to see you tonight. Does anybody else in our audience care to speak in favor of this petition? If so, please come to the microphone, let us hear what you have to say. Seeing none. Does anybody care to speak in opposition to this petition? Seeing none. We now close it to the public's input into the petition consideration, and open up the board discussion, deliberation, and possibly a vote. All right, let's start with you, Jay. What are your thoughts?
Where they're looking to put this looks like it's going to be on the current parking area anyway, from what I can tell. So it would just be an extension and putting a garage kind of over where they're parking cars currently. So between that, how it would fit in the neighborhood, and the acceptance of the neighbor and the space in between houses, I think it's a very reasonable request, and I would be in support of it.
John?
Yeah, I think it's nice, and it'll be nice.
John?
As I said before, I think they meet the criteria of the bylaw. I think it's well-balanced on the lot. As Dick indicated, it's tastefully done. Support of the neighbors. The furthest building away is quite far away, so there's really going to be no negative impact to that neighbor, and he is in support, so I'm in support as well.
And Dick, how about you?
And I have nothing to add to what I said before. I'd be in favor of the proposal.
Is this the first time in ages that I can remember, perhaps you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Tata, that I haven't seen alternative relief request requiring 2 votes? It's nice to see that we know how to present this particular issue to this board.
You can wait about 10 minutes, you'll have some more, so.
Well, no, I'm just saying, I'll give you hell on that one, but this one, no. I mean, we don't have to deal with an and/or request of either a special permit or a variance, and then ask this board to figure out what it is you want, you know.
Be patient.
Huh?
Be patient.
I think that you do meet the criteria of the bylaw for sure. I don't think this will cause any undue hazard, nuisance, nor congestion, nor change the character or be in a detrimental way of the existing or future character of the neighborhood of town. It's a nice plan. I can't wait to see the constructed property. We'll expect for the board to be invited to a barbecue, will we?
Sure.
I'm only kidding about that. We're not looking for graft, okay? But good luck with it. It looks like a great project. Hope you can get it done while the weather's still good enough to get it done. I saw one down at the end of South Street. At the very end of South Street, they put on an addition, and it was weather tight within a day and a half of its putting on the deck on the foundation. It was the most amazing closure of a property I've ever seen. And they blended roof shingles absolutely perfectly. It looks like it's a whole brand-new roof altogether.
Wow.
Just a wonderful, wonderful job. I got to drive up to every morning and look at. So it's kind of nice to see how fast they're moving along with it. Hopefully yours will be the same. You'll be in there before the Super Bowl, huh? A nice big room and have a big TV. Okay, so is anybody prepared to make a motion on this petition?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we accept or approve petition 4986 for a special permit as requested.
And without condition?
Without condition.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
I'll second, if nobody.
John beat you, but we'll
No
give you
problem.
a chance next one.
No problem.
And does the board need any discussion on this motion made and seconded to approve the petition without condition? Hearing none. Let's do a voice vote. All those in favor of the petition, the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? It carries unanimously. I look forward to a draft decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure, take your time.
Dolores, can I have one of those ones?
Guess you don't have to move far, Mr. Tardif, huh?
I hope not.
So that brings us to our last matter on the calendar tonight.
You want-
That's petition 4963. I'm sorry, no, 4979, Shoreside Properties LLC, located at 33 through 37 Seaside Village Road, South Yarmouth, Massachusetts. Property being in a zoning district, R25, and in the HMOD overlay, 2 overlay district. The applicant seeks to create 100% seasonal employee housing by special permit is allowed pursuant to bylaw section 404.5.2 and 404.5.3 subparagraph 7 and 8. On the alternative, a variance from 404.5.3 subparagraph 7 and 8. Mr. Tardif, again, good evening, sir. Please identify yourself to the public at home.
For the record, I'm Paul Tardif, attorney in Yarmouthport, and seated with me is Jack Hines, who's the manager of the property owner, Shoreside Properties LLC. As you indicated, we are seeking a special permit under 404.5.2 and 3. We asked for a variance because we were told to ask for a variance in case. So I will have to think about that a little bit longer next time, but I believe that it is clearly a special permit under our bylaw. This property is located in the R25 and the HMOD zoning districts and contains 1.4 acres of area with 370 feet of frontage on Seaside Village Road, and is currently improved with 6 buildings, which include 25 motel units and 21 units with kitchenettes, a common kitchen in the recreation room. And those properties were built between 1940 and 1955. It also has an outdoor picnic area with 3 gas grills. Property provides a total of 52 parking spaces on site. There are no exterior changes contemplated by this relief. Rather, the relief sought tonight pertains to the use of the property. The property was owned by William and Beverly Hart from July of 1991 to December of 2021, and operated as the Village Green Motel. And for those who don't know where that is, it's located just west of the Skipper Restaurant down on South Shore Drive. In December of 21, it was sold to an owner who held the property for about 5 months. and then it was sold to the current owner in April of 2022, so just this past April. Mr. Hines inherited a property which was, for the most part, neglected for years. Dated rooms, there's no air conditioning in the rooms, rotted wood everywhere, outdated electric systems. Up till a few years ago, there were no phones in the room. And as you can imagine, a property near the ocean, as this one is, takes a beating, and constant maintenance is vital. And if you don't do it, even in the off-season, you pay for it the following year. We know all about deferred maintenance in this town. That was not done, and so it has fallen on my client to address those concerns. As you may know, EOS Hospitality is the entity which now owns and operates the Red Jacket Beach Resort, the Blue Water, the Riviera, the Edge of the Sea motels, all located along South Shore Drive, right in that same area. They also have other properties, other motel properties within town, but those are the most four relevant with regard to this petition. And that transaction occurred in November of 2021. Those properties are all within walking distance of my client's property. As you can imagine, and in order to operate successfully those motels, a large workforce of house cleaners, maintenance people, front desk people, food service people, and others are needed to make it work for our summer tourists. And housing for that workforce is also necessary and more difficult than ever to accommodate. Many of you remember in the 70s and the 80s, the Cape was blessed to have young European college kids come to town to work for the summer. I believe Mr. Healy was one of them, who was just here before you. Housing was available, not plentiful, but it was available. But as you will recall, there are some stories of up to 20 people stuffed into a 3-bedroom home because it was affordable. It was the way to make money to bring home back to their countries. With those arrangements came noise, parking issues, and landlords who didn't really care to address anything. And so that sort of went away. Our young workforce, that young workforce stopped coming, and regulations made housing unaffordable for the workers and financially unsound for owners who were now paying 2 or 3 times the value of their house for the same homes that they would have bought years before. Our workforce changed over the years, and slightly older workforce arrived requiring housing, which puts the burden on employers to provide that housing or not have sufficient work staff at all. I know of several businesses in the Mid-Cape area who have had to go out and buy their own housing units to house their staff, because otherwise they're leaving the Cape. And I've seen this problem blossom over the recent years with the explosion of housing prices and the lack of young families or workers who can remain on the Cape to support our local businesses. Enter EOS Hospitality. They needed housing for their workforce, which you can imagine is sizable. This past summer, the applicant's owners rented all the rooms at the property to EOS for its workers. Remember that the applicant purchased the property in April of 2022 and has not had a fair opportunity to completely renovate the property. However, since that time, the following repairs and improvements have been made or will be before next summer. A new Title V septic system, updating all electrical system to code, painting all rooms, painting the outside, removing all the trim that is rotted and replacing it with AZEK, planting the interior portions of the property, air conditioning systems in the rooms, which is new. It's not replacing them. It's the first time they've been there. So the applicant is relying on 404.5.3 of the zoning bylaw and seeking to create seasonal employee housing. That's the title of that section, by leasing 100% of the available rooms to employees of EOS. In accordance with that bylaw, the applicant complies with 9 of the 11 conditions for the issuance of a 1-year seasonal employee housing permit. Section 404.5.2 of the bylaw states that if an applicant cannot meet all of the provisions, outlined in that section that a special permit from the Board of Appeals is required. And in this case, the applicant cannot comply with conditions number 8 and number 9, which state as follows. Number 8 says, all employees shall have access to cooking facilities, which shall include at a minimum a microwave, sink, cooktop, refrigerator, freezer. And number 9, no more than 15% of any hotel or motel rooms at a single parcel may be used for employee housing. As I indicated earlier, the property does have 21 guest rooms with kitchenettes, but the remaining 25 guest rooms do not. EOS, as they have done this past summer and will again next summer, if this permit is granted, provides meals for each of its employees, and actually at this location has a chef on site to provide cooked hot meals for any of the employees living there every day. The current housing crisis for temporary employees or entry-level workers here on the Cape Cod has reached a crisis level. We've talked about this before at prior hearings. The need to house seasonal employees, some of whom are earning minimum wage or even considerably more than minimum wage, are unable to break into either the rental housing market or purchase housing market. I'm not going to go through each of the criteria, the statistics that I found with regard to housing. I can tell you just from my own experience handling a good deal of real estate transactions that I know what you know, which is the pricing of housing has become out of reach for entry-level people. And with that, they leave, and with that, the jobs. And so you have a number of people struggling here on the Cape as a business owner, as well as these people who have to leave the Cape after all these years. Applying the proposal to the plain language of this bylaw, the special permit can be issued as the site is not going to be substantially more detrimental to the town or neighborhood than the existing use, which is a traditional motel. In addition, there will be no undue nuisance, hazard, or congestion created, and there will be no substantial harm to the established or future character of the neighborhood or town. Now, Mr. Chairman, I know you have a number of letters submitted to this board in anticipation of this hearing. I believe, at last count, I think I had 25 or 26 letters. If you read those letters, you will think what I just told you is far-fetched. And I'm not sure how you want to handle those letters, Mr. Chairman, but I would like to at least summarize what you have and address those at this point, if I could. And I'm not going to address them by name, street, or otherwise, but just some of their content. You have a letter from one owner that has a bare lot. There's no house on it, they don't live there, they live somewhere else. You have a letter urging the board to keep the property acting as a motel or a condominium, and praising the longtime former owner for the condition that my client now needs to correct. You have many letters regarding the current condition of the property. You have complaints about speeding cars, loud music, and parking nightmares along those side streets. You even had a letter addressed to my client reminiscing about the way the prior owner maintained the property and supported that position with pictures taken from vantage points only gained by walking unaccompanied all over the property. And you have letters from abutters who are afraid of the, quote, hardly traceable non-residents, foreign workers who add a slum atmosphere across the street, who may bring not only dirt in the streets, but also crime, personal assault, something called hooliganism, and burglaries to Yarmouth, which the letter also labels, by the way, as the food bank capital of Cape Cod. And that the owner is trying to make a quick and easy buck from this. Well, I hate to shatter the illusions of those neighbors, what they had of the prior owner, and I'm sure that the Harts were very nice people, but the place was falling down when they sold it. And I can provide this board with numerous Yelp reviews, which are not flattering at all to the condition of that property back when they owned it. But I can also have Mr. Hines, who has developed, owned, operated, and managed motel properties in Massachusetts and in Florida, about the condition of the property and his timeline to address some of those things.
You know, first I'd like to say, Paul and Bev had, as Paul said, operated that property for about 30 years. And they had a model that was very successful. They offered affordable accommodations to people across the street from the beach. And there was, there was no air conditioning in the rooms, and there were other things that weren't perfect, but it was a model that worked, and the customers that came there were happy to return every year, and they were happy with the property. But the property was sold, and that model doesn't work anymore. I've been in the hotel business for 40 years down here, and everyone knows what's happening with inflation and the costs of insurance and the cost of utilities and the cost of staff. So to offer those accommodations at an affordable rate that model doesn't work anymore. When I bought the hotel in April of this year, my intent was, EOS was not involved at that point, and I put the property, as Paul said, the previous owner bought it in December. They put it back on the market in February, and I put it under agreement in February and closed in April. At that point, EOS was not involved, and my intent was to upgrade the property, operate as a motel, increase the number of units, put a third story on, add 14 more units, and just upgrade it and operate as a motel at a different price point than the Harts were at, but to continue to operate it as a motel. During that period, the EOS opportunity came along, and I thought it was a good use of the property. It is a residential neighborhood, and there would be less turnover, less traffic, and I assume less noise, and it would be quieter. Obviously, from some of the neighbors' responses, that's not what they feel happened. So, the opportunity is we can continue. EOS and I signed a 1-year lease. They originally wanted a 5-year lease, but we both decided to make sure it was going to work for everybody. And I didn't want to get into a situation where there'd be a lot of problems at the property and be tied to a 5-year lease. At the end of the summer, we both felt it worked well and decided to make a commitment to move forward for a longer term. So that's why we're here tonight. As Paul said, there's a big demand. I've been in the hotel business again for 40 years down here, and getting staff right now is extremely difficult. Housing is a big problem for them, and I know the neighbors don't want people in the neighborhood, but where do we put them?
Mr. Chairman, as I indicated, we used to have a very youthful workforce here on the Cape in the 70s and the 80s, and that's changed. The average age of the employees living at the Village Green this past summer was 39 years of age. Only 17 of the 81 employees on site had cars. The rest either walked or used bicycles or the 2 shuttle vans that EOS offers to get to and from work. The majority of the employees are quite traceable to their Florida homes where they live, and they were brought up here for the summer because of the difficulty in finding workers. There wasn't just one property manager, there were more than one. All parking was done on site, not in the street. And because the property is at the intersection of South Shore Drive, no speeding cars were from our property or heading out. If anything, they were arriving at our property and going right into the parking lot and not into the residential neighborhood behind it. It is a cut-through. That road is a cut-through to get to Seaview. So there is some people that do that, but there's no evidence that they were coming from our facility, mostly because they all work at those 4 motels right on South Shore Drive. I pulled the Yarmouth police calls for services at the property for the entire summer. The only thing that showed up was one medical problem on October 7th that they attended. I submitted the deed with the application in this matter, which is required as part of the application, but it is public record that Mr. Hines paid $3.9 million for this property. He's going to spend another $750,000 to another $1 million to fix it up. He's not here for a quick buck. If you wanted to do that, there were other ways of doing that. The only letter that we got in this packet that talked about problems that were addressed is, if you, I don't know if you have them numbered, but it's from a direct abutter to this property that had a couple of problems, called Mr. Hines. They were addressed, and then they were addressed with EOS as well. We do have a representative from EOS here tonight, Justin Grimes, if you have questions for him. The issuance of a temporary special permit will not be substantially more detrimental to the town or the neighborhood than if the property was used as a motel. A traditional motel use will result in greater parking demand, greater turnover, not to mention the effect this will have on the ability to provide motel rooms to our #1 business in the area for the last 60 years, tourism. In addition, there will be no undue nuisance, hazard, or congestion created, and there's no substantial harm to the established or future character of the neighborhood. In fact, there's going to be less congestion of traffic when you have 17 cars in a parking lot of 52. And most of them are either walking or taking their bikes. There's less hazard by the use of shuttle vans, and based on the manner in which the problems were addressed this past summer, when brought to our attention, there will be no undue nuisance either. You do have another letter in there from the owner of the Skipper Restaurant located right next door, who supports this project wholeheartedly. He cites that there were no issues that he was aware of, and he had no problem with anything going on at that property, and supports it. Similar relief was granted by this board to another applicant in April of 2022. It's a different property, different location, we get it. But it did back up into a residential neighborhood. There were no issues with the operation of that property last summer, and it was EOS employees again that were there. EOS operated this property this summer in the same manner and addressed the issues when they were raised. We again appear before you with a town-wide and Cape-wide problem and are seeking relief from this board. A number of factors have come together to create an impossible housing situation in a tourist-based location. However, without a current bylaw that addresses this in any other section that can put this many people up for our employees, we have no other place to go but to this board for relief. The impact of not addressing it could be enormous. If we can't find housing for our seasonal employees, we risk not only a drop in the commercial real estate tax base, but a drop in rooms taxes as motels struggle to find employees to maintain properties to the standard tourists expect. Not to mention the fact that many of these motels will then have to put their employees into rentable rooms and thus reducing rooms tax even further. Our tourist numbers could also drop if they can't find basic tourist needs being met, like wait staff in restaurants. I urge the board to look at the situation and remedy the current predicament. I urge you to understand that the applicant is addressing a major repair project for the property, which he now can get to as our seasonal employees have left for the season. But it's been unattended for decades, and it doesn't happen overnight. Most importantly, please understand that valid complaints of neighbors are addressed and will be addressed. Traditional motel turnover is much worse than what was proposed temporarily tonight. And invalid complaints regarding crime, hooliganism, and addressing the town of Yarmouth as the food bank capital of the Cape is misplaced, objectionable for a number of reasons, including that I was a member of the Yarmouth Rotary that put that food bank together and helps so many people here in town. Without knowing that, you don't know much about Yarmouth. I thank you for the opportunity to address you. I think just Mr. Grimes will address you after we've heard from some of the neighbors. Thank you.
You'll address us when?
After we hear from the neighbors, if that's possible.
Sure. It's your presentation, so sure. Mr. Martin, any questions of our petitioner?
Yeah, I'm afraid so. First of all, is this a motel or a condo motel?
It's a motel. He owns all the units.
Okay. All right, but it went through approval for condos back in 1989, and I believe that approval is in place, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. I guess it doesn't matter in one sense. You can still run it as a motel, I suppose. On that decision, I noticed that it said that there would be no further zoning relief would be granted for this site. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, and what happened there was that there were a number of petitions before that one where they were adding building and building and building. Those that became the cottages, and I think that's what the purpose was no more living space at that time. Now, if we want to come back, we can come back and ask this board.
I'm just saying, I don't know if that
Sure.
comes into play here, whether something that you have to address one way or another, but, yeah,
I don't think so, because we're just talking about the use tonight.
okay. I certainly agree with the fact that we need housing for employees, we need affordable housing in general. I'm just, I have a lot of concerns here. This bylaw is put together in terms of workforce housing within a hotel motel, and it was given controls of 15% for a reason. In other words, you'd have a motel, some of the rooms could be used for that purpose, but there'd be control there, there'd be a manager, there'd be an office, there'd be somebody that could watch over the the tenants, let's call them, the employees, I guess I'd say. So it's a whole different ballgame than when you're trying to convert a motel to this type of housing, which is in a residential zone to begin with, unlike the Parkers River Resort, which, by the way, doesn't directly border any housing. This is right in the middle of a relatively upscale housing neighborhood where they've been used to this being controlled nicely by a family-run operation that lived there and made sure that everything was run nice, and now it's off-premise control that and buses and a little coming and moving people around and just, I was by there during the summer a couple of times, and it did look terrible. There were windows open and things in the windows and drapes hanging everywhere. Even now, I know there's been work being done, and that's good. It certainly is looking better. The windows are looking better. I'd have to say I don't care for the color of paint where we have two tones of blue. It's that's my own personal opinion. I'm throwing in as an aside, but the reason they put that in for the 15% is so that something like this wouldn't happen. So there wouldn't be a motel that is just housing for employees who are here, and they want to live and they want to have fun. They're working here for the summer. They're going to have friends over and they're going to have parties outside their motel doors. It's different than a family-run motel when you have this kind of operation going. Doesn't mean it couldn't be possibly done if it was better control, but apparently this year anyways, there was not that kind of control that's needed if this is going to run and be acceptable to the neighborhood. Look at all these neighbors here. This is not what you want to see. This is not what's being a good neighbor, and even if you have a different story than some of them have, they were certainly affected. They would not be here complaining about noise and traffic and the place looking like hell. And it certainly did. And granted, you haven't had much time to be able to make improvements to make it look better. Is the pool going to be filled in, used, or what's going to go on with the pool, by the way?
That's up to EOS. Again, with them right now, they lease the whole property from me. So
What?
they lease the whole property.
So we don't know whether they're
actually
going to,
operating it.
because right now that looks like a garbage bin.
I believe they're going to open the pool next year. They did not open it this year. They did, however, have the front desk open from 8 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. So the front desk was manned every day. And then they had managers living on the property at night.
Seeing a lot of head shaking. It's, you got to work with your neighbors. Everybody would love to see you, Jack, do what you've done and done other places and take this motel as you originally planned and make a real nice motel out of it, or make a real nice condominium out of it. I think everybody would be real happy with that. But 100% employee housing in this kind of neighborhood is, in my estimation, not a very good use for it. What happened to the previous owner who was only owned it a few months, by the way? I'm just curious.
I don't know, they put it back on, they bought it in
Just put it
December
right back
and
on the
then
market.
put it back
Okay.
on the market.
No, excuse me,
Not yet.
not the way we do it.
Yeah. All right, those are my comments, concerns, other questions I have, I guess, would be, so this is strictly for the employees of these resorts in that neighborhood. And the shuttle bus would be running, it runs how often during the day, back and forth and into this
It's
property?
usually in the evenings when people don't have a ride home at night.
All right, I have a lot of concerns, and a lot of that really goes back to my driving by this place a number of times this summer and saying, my God, what happened to the Village Green Motel? And, because it used to be a nice family-run motel, granted, it's not up to date today's standards. It needs to be. But I think it needs to run as a motel, and they can have 15% of the rooms as employee housing, just as they can have 15% of the rooms, or 10%, or 5%, or whatever, at the Red Jacket and at the Blue Water and so forth, too. I mean, that's why this bylaw exists as such. That's why it doesn't say 100%. So those are some of my concerns. All for now.
Mr. Lego?
Thank you. Now, EOS, is this so they were running this last season as well?
Yes.
Did they get any permits from the town to do it?
Didn't.
What were they thinking when they didn't do that? They didn't read the bylaw?
Probably not, and they were at a last-minute type of situation where they realized getting employees to work for them when they bought it in November was going to be difficult.
Well, all three of those properties, which I'm quite familiar with, I grew up down on South Shore Drive and spent a lot of time pool hopping down there in each one of their pools.
You were gonna say you were jogging.
Look familiar.
I've done that too, so I'm dating myself. They have the ability to take some of their own units, 15% of them, and house their own employees, correct?
They have that under the bylaw, correct?
Why don't they do that?
Because if you take them offline, it makes it difficult to operate.
Are you suggesting that they would be unprofitable if they took them offline?
Not saying that, but I'm saying that to centralize them in one and service them that way is a lot more efficient for those hotels.
I share Dick's concerns. I've seen that all last summer. I thought it was a zoo over there. I didn't know what was going on either. It's always a zoo going down that road anyway in the summer, because if the people at the Village Green aren't parking all over the place, the people from the Skipper are parking all over the place. Or the beach, okay? So that's just the nature of that little area. It's always been like that. But I think the purpose and intent of the bylaw was to limit this to 15%, not 100%. I know we gave some relief up on Route 28. I consider that different. That's up in a commercial area. You're down here in the heart of a residential district. And I think, I know it very well, that piece of property. Right out the back door, there's houses all along. In fact, if you go down Parkwood Road a little bit, the first house on the left is directly adjacent to the hotel property. So, I mean, if someone's sitting in the hotel property having a conversation, most of those people can hear the conversation. I don't think it's realistic to think that the employees aren't going to have people over at night, you know, have a couple of drinks outside, whatever. And that's what people like to do, and I understand that, and that's what hotel guests like to do as well. But to turn this into a 100% employee housing, I wouldn't be able to support that. I think there are alternatives for them. Personally, I think the highest and best use of this property, given the demand of hotels down there and the prices that you can get per room and where you're located to the beach and to the Skipper and everything, I think you'd be better off doing a hotel down there, but that's your decision, Jack, not ours. But those are my thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. John?
So is the intent to just use this for housing April through October, like the bylaw says?
Correct.
And what'll happen November through March? You're gonna use it as a motel again?
No, it would be closed that time of the year.
Just close it down?
Yeah, whether it becomes a hotel or gets used for housing, it would be closed in the off-season.
So it'll only be that seasonal period?
And any relief granted tonight would be for 1 year. That's what the bylaw says. It wouldn't be for ongoing, so.
How many people do you have or have been living in these units? Is there a max?
81,
81 for the 46 units, right?
correct.
So, less than a couple. Did these folks have cars? Did they all have cars?
17 cars on property.
17 cars, that's all there was in the parking. That's all I have, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Frapery?
I guess first of all, I just want to question the posting on this. It talked about Article 404.5.3, Part 7 and 8. I think it should be 9, 8, and 9 in the latest bylaw, and I just wanted to check and make sure that that's accurate. You're talking about the cooking facilities and the 15%, I believe, correct?
Correct.
The latest bylaw I have, which is dated April 26th, that would be 8 and 9 and not 7 and 8.
Right. I think I addressed that.
I don't know if that's a problem, Mr. Chairman, because of the posting, but just thought I'd point that out. I did have a question. I think Mr. Igor asked one of my first questions, which was, why didn't they get an approval this year? Because I say EOS did come to us for the unit, for the property that was on Route 28, which is a commercial district. So they were aware of the issue and aware of the bylaw. And I don't understand why they moved forward with this one, which seems like it started later than they came to us for that one, which is disappointing. Do you have any explanation for that, Mr. Tardif?
I'm not sure I do, Jack.
No, in the lease, it calls for them to meet the zoning bylaw. I believe they were actually moving people every 28 days to accommodate that.
Which may continue.
Well, it's disappointing that they're looking past that, because I met the people at the other facility in the parking lot, and they were definitely aware of the need to get a permit. As far as I think I had some questions about number of units and people per unit. I guess the maximum will be 2 people per unit. Is that correct? Or whatever the health department approves?
I believe, yeah, whatever the health department approved.
It's 2 people per unit.
2 people per room. And has a Title V septic update to support all that been done, or is it being done this winter?
The Title V has been done.
It has been done? Okay. I think I echo some of the comments that are made by my other board members. I'm concerned with this one because it is in a neighborhood, a family neighborhood, and a residential neighborhood versus in a commercial area like on Route 28. So I'm very concerned about that. I recognize the housing issues. It's not just seasonal housing, but affordable housing and housing in general is a real problem on the Cape right now. It's not getting any better. But I'm not sure this is the solution for this situation. So that's all I have.
I'm going to start with a few comments before we get to questions, and perhaps that will help in the tone and tenor of which we're going to proceed tonight. First of all, I think anybody who's listened to this board in our discussions and deliberations concerning particularly deviances from the sign code have heard us say time and time again that this isn't the board that legislatures change or changes to our zoning bylaws. And I think a wholesale change to the zoning bylaw is being asked for here. I think that we were asked, some members, and I know most notably Mr. Igo, I don't know that Mr. Martin was on the board at the time, but we were asked to go to the planning board when we first started talking about employee zoning, employee housing, many years ago, and this has been a topic in this town for years and years and years, and this was sort of a compromise provision that we see before us in 405.2, I'm sorry, 404, numbers 1 through 12. The compromise being that the percentage was a matter of great debate. And it was struck at 15% for a reason. And the reason was so that we would not be creating another, what was that wonderful one that's been replaced by the very pretty, what was the name of it? The Cavalier. Was it Cavalier? We wouldn't have another den of iniquity being developed in town, known as hotel rooms. And it was a very, very concerned effort in which many participants in this town joined. In fact, I suspect that Mr. Hines did as well, because he had a great interest in this topic. And I know Mr. Hines to be a very good hotelier. But this is not a reflection on him, it's a reflection on what the parties that wish to lease this property or have leased it from him are seeking to do. And that's to change the whole tenor and nature of what this town struggled with in the first instance to create seasonal housing for employees. If it needs to be expanded, it needs to be expanded at town meeting, not before this board, I respectfully suggest. So I'm going to tell you, if brought to the task tonight of voting on this, my vote will be a loud no. And I've already heard another member talk about it being a no. So I can't speak for him, I can't speak for any other board member, but absent somebody convincing me with some fabulous new information that should make me forget the limitations specifically of 8 and 9 and why they were placed in there. And they were very hot button topics. So why they were placed in there, I'm going to tell you, I don't believe I could be dissuaded from my belief that a no vote would be warranted. The fact in my mind, my conclusion on this is that what's being done is we're taking the cheapest hotel rooms we can find on that street and making that employee housing so that the more expensive rooms can be kept open in the hotels that this seeks to service. So I don't think that's what this bylaw on seasonal housing was ever intended to do. I think it was intended to recognize that a hotel needs employees to survive, and that hotel employees are transient, and they move from Florida to Hyannis, to Yarmouth, to Switzerland in the winter, to wherever. But they do it on a temporary basis and not as permanent housing. And we're creating here what effectively is something that has no purpose, no utilization of its intended purpose, that is of a hotel, and making it into effectively nothing but housing. And we're creating essentially, how many units are here? 7?
46.
46, so we're making 46 new housing units. And I don't think that's the intention of this 404, bylaw 404. I just don't believe it. I don't believe that it would ever pass the muster, asked at town hall, at town meeting, if these 8 and 9 were asked to be changed in the manner your petitioner is seeking to have it changed. I don't think town meeting would approve it. I don't think you're ever going to see town meeting say, okay, we can convert a hotel to 100% employee housing. Maybe you acquire property off-site, and somehow there's going to be a new zoning bylaw that comes in, and that was suggested and debated and discussed as the way to address this very severe problem of seasonal employees in these units. But to say that this board should legislate that change, particularly even in the fact that all units don't have kitchenettes. I mean, that was a very important thing we discussed back when seasonal housing came into effect, as was the percentage, the limited percentage. And that percentage was, I think, ultimately compromised, despite motel owners and hotel owners' desires to see the percentage be higher. It was compromised at that versus a public feeling that it should have been a lower amount for the public input. So my vote's going to be a no tonight if brought to task to vote on it. I forewarn you of that. If you'd like to continue on with the hearing, I'll start to read letters and invite people to come up to the to the witness.
Do you think I could have 5 minutes with my client?
Sure,
Please, we can just have a,
absolutely. We're going to take a 10-minute recess, everybody.
okay.
Board members, we can't discuss this while we're in recess.
Yeah.
How are you? I know. How you doing? Good.
Decision now, especially.
No problem. Yeah, well, good to see you. I'm doing all right. Yeah. A little bit. A little bit. Yeah.
All right.
That's right. Yeah, it's. Yeah. I'm not even sure if we'll get to the point of getting your input, as much as we might like to. I mean, even just doing this without even trying to get permits in advance.
Just so you know, I'm gonna have to tell Mary you let him go inside of the cigarette.
Yep.
I'm not supposed to be.
No, I didn't, and I meant to try and, how else to follow up, but I never heard anything.
I try to go I try to go easy on stuff before Thanksgiving.
I think it is, as long as you don't go within 6 feet of the line. Because again, the subdivision, well, that subdivision was a little newer, actually. But, yeah, it's certainly the lot meets the criteria in terms of being unusual. And when it's got a topography or shape or whatever, that comes into play pretty nicely. Yeah, yeah. PCI? But you'd have a pretty good chance with that. Yeah. Is that it? Yeah. I was just curious, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, good. Good to see you, Lisa. If you hear anything. Yeah, I will let you know on that, yeah.
Florida lately?
Yeah, just got back.
Yeah, I just got back myself. You look like you had a little sun.
Yeah. Trying to be good. It's not easy for me to be good.
He came back yesterday. I got a 6 a.m. flight out, so, which, I mean, I got out of bed at 3:30. I was over at the airport at like, it was so early, Dunkin' Donuts wasn't even open yet. Yeah.
Should have brought wine.
For JetBlue to cancel flights now, so yeah.
Well, that was another thing, too. I said at least the plane will originate there, and it was on the ground there.
It was supposed to be,
Yeah. You got to be careful. And you know, I get delayed there all the time. They're always delayed.
it's always screwed up. Everything's always screwed up. And every plane's freaking full.
I know it. I know it. Myers. Well, they won't let you down at the beach. I'm down in Naples, which they got hit pretty hard actually down at the shoreline, but just
flooding.
yeah, the flooding was unbelievable. Oh my God! But Fort Myers Beach just got wiped out. Yeah, and my late mother-in-law was at Myers Beach for many years, and so I spent a lot of time up there. And it's just Sanibel is not in much better shape either.
From job to job in the season.
Aerials of the Sanibel. But I just can't believe. One thing I can't believe is how much sand got deposited on the island. I mean, just tons of sand.
And
It's like everybody's got yards of it, yards like you wouldn't yards. So. Oh yeah, yeah. It's going to take a long time. I think it's going to take 10 years to rebuild Fort Myers Beach.
What I saw, to remove all that debris.
Oh yeah, they're still doing it.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to make people rebuild to code.
Or wherever in the summer.
That's what's gonna happen.
How you doing? Good.
who's that? Who? Oh, of course. Of course. How do you know her? Oh, yeah? Great girl. Oh, is she living down there permanently?
No.
On vacation or something? Or?
No, she bought a place right here. She stays down here right
Wait, I think I remember that happening, yeah. Yes, for the longest time, she stayed friendly with my wife. They had a girls' thing, they all got together, and, you know, a drinking thing and all that. I won't go any further.
Oh, you're not going to see all.
I'm sure Georgia was the driver, the designated driver. Please do.
The feds are going to come in and bail them out. They're going to make them rebuild all. Everything's going to be 10+ feet in the air, which. But it'll be better. Yeah.
You know.
Are you ready to start this meeting? We're going to get out of here by 8 o'clock?
Is he here?
Oh, I forgot about them.
On the phone with their principal. These two lovely women walking down the beach. I don't have my glasses on. My buddy's standing next to me, Ken Sargent.
We don't have all night?
Yeah. He looks in.
You're friends with Kent, aren't you? You're friends with Kent?
Oh, of course you know. Oh my God.
Kate works with us, yeah.
So, Kate, my wife was there. Don't worry.
Stayed at my house.
I know. I forgot about that. And so
I got a lot of
he's sitting next to me, stand next to me.
Fort Myers, Estero.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful women, huh?
Yeah, Bonita Beach, they got wiped out.
Yeah, Bonita Springs, yeah.
One of my spots, Doc's Beach House, used to like to get down there, right on the water. That thing got wiped out.
It's his wife and a friend. And these two were, him and the boyfriend of the other behind them. And I'm saying, in Fort Myers Beach, there's not even the chance to be incognito in Fort Myers Beach.
That's right.
All right, if we could have some water, please.
Maybe now there is.
Thank you. Mr. Tardif, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, Could, at this point, we'd like to request that we withdrawn without prejudice, and that goes for both forms of relief.
That's on both forms of relief, you
Correct.
said? Okay.
So moved.
So, just so everybody understands out there, the petitioner has a right to ask for a withdrawal of their petition. And that petition is, that withdrawal is always granted by this board without prejudice, meaning they're free to bring a petition in the future and not be bound by any rules against repetitive petitions. So on that motion, on that request, there's been a motion made by Mr. Igo to allow the withdrawal of the petition for both a variance and or special permit, that withdrawal to be without prejudice. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm going to give it to Mr. Martin tonight. You got one already.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm not trying to be dramatic. Just give me a second. That motion has been made and seconded. Does the board care to have any discussion on the motion before proceeding to a vote? Hearing none. We're going to do this by roll call tonight. Mr. Frapery?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Dick?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that carries 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There'll be a memorandum placed in the file on just the vote, nothing else, okay? Thank you very much. Have a good night. And to all, we do have a, no, please. We have other business, thank you, but we have other business. And so on our agenda tonight, we have, excuse me, everybody, we have other business. Could you leave the room quietly, please? Just amazing. Can't imagine people don't know the rules of meetings, but that's okay. So while we shout over them,
Takes him a few minutes.
you have asked us to continue the approval of the meeting minutes for October 27, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So we'll put that on the agenda for the 12/8 meeting, is that correct?
Yes, Mr.
Okay, so with that, does somebody care to move to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
And is there a second?
Second.
And on a voice vote, all those in favor of adjourning, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you very much, everybody.